Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope all of you are doing brilliantly well. At the very outset, I'd like to welcome each one of you to this live episode on how to become a great TED speaker. Now, it's an absolute delight to have all of you, primarily because we've been in this journey together for the last 12 episodes. And in the last few episodes, basically, my dear participants, I walked you through the idea behind TED Talk, the vision, the mission, the do's and the don'ts, the pros and the cons, the fundamentals, the essentials. And I know it's been so much fun, primarily because you've been proactive in your comments, in your participation. And I expect the same proactive participation from you till the end of our episodes. So basically, we at PlanetSpark firmly believe in the idea of experiential learning. We believe that the skills like public speaking, creative writing, confidence building, and personal development can be learned only through practice, through application of ideas and protocols. And these episodes that we bring to you at PlanetSpark TV Live are all about helping you understand the concepts, the different life skills and soft skills. And I meet you every day from Monday to Friday from 7:15 or 7:30. And in these 40 minutes, my dear participants, I walk you through some potent, powerful, and practical ideas on public speaking, and to be more specific, on TED Talk. And what can you do right now at this junction, irrespective of where you are in life? What are the activities, the routines, and the ideas that you can easily follow in order to become a TED speaker in future? And the beauty of these episodes, my dear participants, is that they're highly practical in nature. They're not lip services. They are very practical because you have the power, the capability to apply all these tactics, all these techniques, all these mantras in your everyday life. And how do you do that? Now, we all know that I'm sure your students right now, your school students or your college students, or maybe you're working somewhere, every single day you do get opportunities to communicate. And if you are someone who's playing small with your life, you're having mediocre communication, you're not mindful, you're not intentional, probably it's high time you change your communication game. The best way to change your communication game, my dear participants, is to make sure that you're intentional while communicating. You are intentional about the way you communicate, your words, your voice, your body language. And the more intentional you are, the more mindful you are, the more attentive you are, the more you connect with your audience. Please know that knowing your audience, the listeners, what do they expect from you? What are their needs, their expectations, their concerns, and their interests is equally important. You need to do some research, some ground research before you actually embark upon your presentation, your talk, your speeches, your discussions, your elevator pitches, etc., etc. So please make sure that, my dear participants, you're able to actually analyze your audience and then eventually prepare your content. And the rest of the things will be taken care of if you're really following the techniques that I am gradually unraveling before you. We are basically live on YouTube and Facebook. And I want all of you to grab this opportunity of incredible learning and make sure that you enrich your public speaking skill set. Please encourage your friends to join us. It's a free resource. You see, why not make the most of it? Please encourage your friends as well to join us every day from 7:15 so that even they can take advantage of this opportunity and eventually make a mark in the arena of public speaking. So, my dear participants, as you all know, that we are here to discuss about how to become a great TED speaker and eventually leave your audience mesmerized with your dazzling oratory skills. Now, I spoke to you earlier about the concept behind TED. Well, the very tagline says ideas worth sharing, which means your idea forms the DNA of your talk. How powerful, how practical, how impactful and influential is your idea. That forms the DNA of your talk. And of course, you can actually enhance it and ameliorate it with your presentation skills, your body language, your vocal variety, your selection of words, your content structure, and eventually your audience engagement tools. So please make sure, participants, that you have the ability to amp up your oratory game by actually working, number one, on your content, and then moving on to the other ingredients that you require to be an effective public speaker. Now, what do I have in store for you, ladies and gentlemen? Let's talk about the agenda for the day and also what will we be doing. Now, I'm very sure all of you are very familiar with what we are doing exactly. We're going to start off with an icebreaker. We move on to the fundamentals of a TED Talk. We've been repeating this since episode 1 because I want you to be very, very equipped with the fundamentals of a TED Talk. And the topic today, ladies and gentlemen, is a personal touch. In the last 2 episodes specifically, we talked about the opening minute. We moved on to number 2, the big purpose. And today we'll be discussing about number 3, the personal touch. And I told you to help you guys understand the idea behind TED, we are actually exploring different themes, We're not limiting ourselves to a particular theme. We're trying to explore different themes from different arena, different domains, different crafts, so that you know that a TED Talk can be delivered on absolutely any topic under the sun. All right, my dear participants. So basically, we'll be discussing about number 1. We'll talk at length about the current theme, which is meditation. Right. Earlier, we also discussed about number 1, body language. Number 2, self-confidence. Number 3, we also discussed a little bit about Olympics, climate crisis. And right now, we are on the 5th theme, and we are trying to actually make sample talks through the themes and through the structures I'm sharing with you right now. We'll be discussing about the essentials of a personal touch, ladies and gentlemen, essential 1, essential 2, essential 3. And I'm going to be interspersing my session with a lot of fun. We'll talk at length about, the essentials. And we'll be having a lot of fun with the games like Who Said This, Fastest Fingers First. I'm going to ask you some questions at the end, which is called Being Smart. I'm going to give you some summaries as well, at a glance summaries. And I'm going to give you a lot of exciting stuff. Like number 1, I'm going to give you 2 words in this session that you can add to your vocabulary to enrich your vocabulary. I'm going to give you some expert tips as well, expert tips based on what you can do to actually make your talk very influential from a speaker's perspective. And at the end, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a recommendation. A recommendation, of course, for TED Talk, but on the theme that we are discussing right now. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to know each other. We know that we always begin every session with an icebreaker, right? So I'm going to ask you a few icebreakers, and then we come to the fundamentals for TED Talk. So let's get to know each other better. To begin with, the first question, have you played any sport? If yes, what is it? Let's see what the comments say. All right, so I have played multiple sports. I played badminton, I played tennis, I have played a lot of indoor games as well, indoor sports as well, represented my school and college at different levels as well. And I'm sure all of you have done it. Could you please write about your sports? All right, Tanishk says cricket. All right. Okay, Twinkle says badminton. Amazing. Great. So looks like my participants are quite sporty, and you've all played sports. Thank you so much, participants. Let's move on to the next question, the next icebreaker. The next one is, have you ever participated in painting competitions? I loved painting competitions in school. And before stepping into debating and public speaking, I used to be a regular participant in paintings and drawings till my 10th grade probably. And I used to win a lot of competitions exclusively in drawing, painting, and art competitions. All right, let's see what the participants say. Okay, so looks like you've taken part in speaking competitions. Wow, amazing, Vidhan. Ishna says, fine arts competition. Okay, Ishna, interesting. So I'm sure all of us basically have taken part in various competitions, and we did make our presence felt. But it's very difficult to actually continue with these hobbies once we grow up. And the ones who are doing it persistently, well, hats off to you. And let's move on to the next question, my dear participants. Which was the last food item you ate? I just had fruits before the session. What about you? All right. Of course, it was tea time for most of you. So most of you had tea and snacks. Okay. Thank you for your responses, participants. Thank you, Vidhan. Thank you, Ishna. Thank you, Tanish. And the last question for you, my dear participants. What is the most peaceful hobby that you have right now? Let's see what the replies are. Yes, indeed, indeed, Twinkle. Reading is actually the most peaceful hobby that even I have at the moment. Okay. Painting, absolutely. Instagram scrolling is what Vedhan says. All right, absolutely. It is undoubtedly very peaceful because you're not causing harm to anyone around you. In fact, you are in your own cocoon. All right, participants, thank you so much for your responses. And now it's time for us to talk about the fundamentals of a TED Talk. Now, you all know, participants, since day one, since the episode one, we've been discussing about the three fundamentals that actually make your TED Talk wholesome, holistic, and fruitful. Number one is a strong opening, is what you require. Number two is a big purpose that you need every time you communicate. So, a big purpose. Number three, a personal touch. So, you need all these three elements, my dear participants, in order to connect with people, in order to reach out to people, and in order to make your talk holistic, wholesome, and engaging. So, please make sure that you know what a strong opening is. We discussed this at length previously. Please, you can go back to our previous episodes anytime on Facebook, on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll be able to extract so much value from them. So basically, my dear participants, a strong opening is how do you begin? And we know our beginnings can be a game changer. So your beginning is really crucial. How do you begin your talk is of prime importance. All right, so a strong opening is crucial. How do you generally begin, my dear participants? Please remember your beginning needs to have, number one, the opening minute needs to have at least an icebreaker. It needs to have an attention grabbing device. You begin with a quote to build credibility. You move on to a catchy line. Then you have something positive about the topic, and then you raise a fundamental question, a relevant question. A big purpose is all about being purposeful while communicating, making sure you highlight the significance of your topic, the importance of your topic before your audience, and then you structure your talk into cause and effect, into efforts and results. And finally, you bring it all together by summarizing. That's a big purpose. And a personal touch, basically, my dear participants, is how do you incorporate your personal experiences, your personal anecdotes, your examples, and your opinions into your talk to make it really personable and energetic and eventually engage with your audience on a very amicable note. Now, the topic that we've chosen today, participant, is meditation. We've been doing this earlier as well. So, what is meditation basically? It's a practice where an individual uses a technique such as mindfulness or focusing on the mind, focusing your entire energy, your mind on a particular object, thought, or activity, and basically training your attention as well as your awareness and achieving a mental clear state and stabilizing your emotions, becoming calmer, becoming more composed. That's how we define meditation, ladies and gentlemen. And what will we be doing today? In today's episode, to be very specific with you, we will be discussing about the third element, which is a personal touch. So we'll talk at length about what exactly is a personal touch, what are the essentials of a personal touch, and how do you actually mold your topic. It is something really engaging with the help of a personal touch, especially something as serious as meditation. Let's find more about this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about essentials of a personal touch. So, personal touch, is how do you make it personable? And there are three essentials which are necessary, and you need to incorporate that in your TED talk. All right, three essentials. What are these three essentials, boys and girls? Number one, your experience. Number two, an anecdote. Anecdote basically is an episode from the life of a famous personality, or maybe your own life. So maybe a short episode from your life pertaining to the topic. And number three is an ideal idol. How do you cite an example of a famous personality, somebody you look up to, and how do you make it relevant to the topic? So three essentials of personal touch: your experience, an anecdote, and an ideal idol. Let's discuss this at length, my dear friends. Let's talk about how do you incorporate your experience into your talk. How do you incorporate your ideas, your experiences, your incidents into the topic and make it more relevant. I'm going to give you an example. And before that, let's talk about why do you have to have an experience of yours to share? Well, we have basically two reasons over here. The first reason is sharing your experience related to the topic, boys and girls. It's a very important aspect since it gives the speech a story-like connect. And I keep telling you, Les Brown, a very prominent public speaker, once said that never share a story without a point, and never share a point without a story. And therefore, you need to have a story-like connect every time you connect with your audience. All right, that's number one. Please make sure that you share your experiences and you create a story-like effect in your speech. Number two is it adds a lot of emotional weightage to your speech. Now, if you really want to be emotionally appealing, emotionally compelling, a story can actually help you do that in a jiffy. So please do that, participants. Let's take an example of how do you do it. For example, I had a phase in my life where I was very anxious and upset about a lot of things in life. My concentration power was also very less and I could not see how to get out of it. That is when meditation helped me. Let's continue with this. I started meditating every day and realized that it improves my mood, makes me feel so much better about myself and my surroundings. It helped me in dealing with the problems I had and gave me a perspective in life. Think about it, boys and girls. How do you incorporate a personal experience? This was a wonderful example of how do you share a simple, a basic, yet a relevant example. Number one, to create a story like connect in your speech. And number two, to add some emotional weightage into your speech. Now, participants, we are at essential one. Let's move on to our first game, which is Who Said This? Now, the reason why we have this game here in our episode is to actually help you understand that quotes are very significant for a public speaker because they come handy anytime. You can make use of them anytime while communicating, and they actually form the cornerstone of your credibility in a talk. So please make use of these quotes, participants. Let's talk about who said this. The first quote I have for you, and I directly have the answers as well. First quote, very prominent, and you must memorize this because you can use this anytime in your talk, in your presentations, in your discussions, in your conversations, in your elevators, pitches, etc., etc. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking, right? So that's a wonderful quote on the significance of making the most of your life, being authentic, and giving back to the world. That's by Steve Jobs, a very prominent quote, and you must memorize it because, as I mentioned earlier, it will come handy anytime while you're communicating. The second one, boys and girls, money and success don't change people. They merely amplify what is already there. That's a quote by Will Smith. We know Will Smith also is a very influential person, and he reaches out to people with the kind of engagement he does. And that's his quote. Money and success don't change people. They merely amplify what is already there. Right, that's another quote for you. Let me bring to you the third quote for the day. If you want to live a happy life, tied to a goal, not to people or things. Wow, truly relevant, precise, and to the point. That's by Albert Einstein, as you see on the screen. Albert Einstein once said that if you want to live a happy life, do not tie to people or things, tied to a goal, right? So participants, that's our first game. Let's move on to our second essential, which is an anecdote. Now, how do you incorporate an anecdote in your speech? How do you have an anecdote? I told you the meaning of an anecdote. It simply means a real episode from the life of either a famous personality or your own life, your personal anecdote. So we have two types of anecdotes. Anecdotes of the famous, personal anecdotes. Now, what really happens when you incorporate an anecdote? Number one, it helps you create credibility. Number two, again, it helps you create a story like Connect. And what should you keep in mind while sharing an anecdote? Now, participants, honestly, it's difficult to actually incorporate an anecdote if you're a newbie, if you're a beginner. Therefore, please remember these two key points. Number one, your anecdote has to be relevant. Please do not have anything irrelevant. Number two, your anecdote should be well positioned. Well positioned, you need to know where exactly to place your anecdote. You can't have two stories back to back. They won't really have that kind of impact you're looking forward to creating. So your anecdote needs to be very well positioned in your speech. Let me quickly give you an example, boys and girls. This is the story of a friend of mine who had been having anxiety and stress issues for a very long time. This was when he started meditating. It became one of the best lifestyle changes he made. Meditation helped him in concentrating and feeling better. Coupled with this, we can continue by saying that daily meditation helped him overcome all his mental troubles and he became confident about himself and his goals as well. Isn't that amazing? That's an anecdote, you see. Anecdote that you're sharing, your personal anecdote, something that your friend has experienced, he narrated to you, and you're sharing that with the audience. So, even this can be done, and that is also a part of your personal touch, boys and girls. Now, something like this, you can also end the story with the story shows how beneficial it is to incorporate meditation in one's life. Please make sure you always have like a call to action at the end of your anecdote, call to action at the end of your short story. Call to action basically is the act of inspiring or encouraging or motivating your audience to take up something, to do something. You trigger them basically. And CTA, call to action, is needed as a public speaker, especially at the end of your stories or anecdotes. Now, a quick word for you to add to your vocabulary, boys and girls. It's benevolent. How do you pronounce it? Benevolent, which means well-meaning and kindly. Somebody who's well-meaning and very kind with you is benevolent. Benevolence is an adjective. Noun is benevolence. I'm going to give you an example. The benevolent lady helped poor people during the pandemic. The benevolent lady helped poor people in the pandemic. Now let's quickly have a fastest fingers round. Yes, no version participants. I'm going to ask you some simple questions and I'm going to expect answers from all of you. All right. Number one, is meditation a recent development? Is meditation a recent development? Well, yes, it's a recent development, though it existed in India thousands of years ago, but actually became a trend recently because we've seen how it has actually revolutionized the way mental health is perceived by people across the globe. So, moving on to the next question, my dear participants. Meditation is not only popular, is not popular and it's only practiced in Asia. Well, that's a big no-no because we know meditation is practiced throughout the world, especially the Westerners have taken it way too seriously. It's taken the mental health industry by storm and people have been practicing it across the globe. The next one, meditation is a part of yoga. What do you think? Well, meditation is undoubtedly a part of yoga. It's an integral part of yoga. So when yoga actually calms your physical body, it's meditation that calms your mental reservoirs. So yes, meditation is a part of yoga. Now let me quickly give you an expert tip, my dear participants. Anecdotes should be brief and to the point. You don't want to bore the audience with your story. So whenever you're crafting or drafting, an anecdote, please make sure it's really short, it's crisp, and it's to the point. Now the third essential, boys and girls. What do we mean by an essential? Essential means a fundamental. So you study the first fundamental as a part of the personal touch, which was your experience. So sharing your experience while talking to your audience. Number two, basically, was an anecdote. Sharing an anecdote of the famous or your personal anecdote, right? The third one, boys and girls, the third element, the third essential of personal touch is what we call an ideal idol. Now, let me make this very, very simple for you. An ideal idol basically means incorporating a short episode from the life of a famous personality into your talk, someone you look up to, someone who's like your role model. And when you do that, you build incredible relationship of trust with your audience. They believe in you because you've done your homework well. And you know your preparatory phase form the very foundation of any talk. So preparations are a key. Your preparations have to be on point. They have to be relevant. And that's the reason you have to spend some time working at your content. So moving on, participants, let me give you an example of what an ideal idol looks like. This is a Vietnamese Thian Buddhist monk. Having established well over 100 books, this man has become one of the world's most influential spiritual and meditation teachers. The lessons within his teaching and books range from vegetarianism to stillness and encompass a wide range of relevant patterns we are seeing in the world today. All right, participants. So that's what we are talking about, the story of Thich Nhat Hanh. And we continue the story. Born way back in 1926, this man was ordained as a bhikkhu in 1951 and has taught at conferences as well as educational institutions. A large chunk of his life was spent as a teacher of comparative religion at Princeton University in the US. Continuing further, ever since he returned to Vietnam, where he continues to teach and spread his lessons around the globe. He's most he's known most of his he's basically prominent for the peace movements and his participation alongside many works on mindfulness. He serves as a true example of how motivation changes one's life. So someone who basically exemplifies the power of motivation and meditation in human life, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly how you incorporate an anecdote, a famous story, a life of a famous personality. And now it's time for me to give you your TED recommendation. I told you there are tons of videos on the internet, and it's really puzzling sometimes to pick up something that you really want to watch and imbibe from. And that's the reason I'm going to share a recommendation with you. Here we go, participants. Here's your recommendation. Today, please make it a point that you watch Sports Psychology Inside the Mind of Champion Athletes. And even though it says sports psychology, it's all about the power of how do you control your mind, especially when it comes to things like victory and defeat in sports. Now, today's session was all about the third fundamental of a TED Talk, which is the personal touch, ladies and gentlemen. And we talked about the three elements of a personal touch: your experience, an anecdote, and an ideal idol. Now, I have a simple request to make before we actually wind up. Please make sure, participants, that you are implementing all these techniques that we've learned. Make sure that you have something prepared on the previous topics like climate crisis or self-confidence or body language, and make sure that you're ready for the next challenge, all right, to learn something new. In the next episode, I'm going to be introducing you to a new topic, boys and girls, and which is a sensation: the pros and cons of social media. We will be talking at length about social media and actually filling this topic into our mold and molding it and rebuilding it into the three fundamentals. That is, number one, the opening. Number two is your big purpose. Number three is your personal touch. So with that, participants, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me and for your proactive participation as well. I really hope the session has been of value to you. Please stay tuned, keep in touch, make sure you're practicing ruthlessly, and I'm going to catch you tomorrow at 7:15 with a fresh episode that will be incredibly valuable to you. Thanks a lot, boys and girls. See you soon. Take care.